All right. Well, I'm just going to kick this one off with something that Andrew and I had finished discussing just before we took a break between the Patreon call and this episode of Dualistic Unity Raw, which is that sometimes, whether we realize it or not, after we've worked through a good deal of our stuff and we have come to a certain recognition, and we find ourselves just going back and back and back into old problems and just dwelling upon issues and looking for things that we still have to deal with to some degree. I mean, that's it. It comes down to the fact that sometimes we're not looking for solutions. We're looking to have problems. And it's because we know who that person is who has problems. I know who I am with problems. I don't know who I am when I let those problems go. And part of that change is being willing to find out. Because often when we are doing fine, we think to ourselves, well, the shoe's going to drop. Surely something's going to go wrong. And you start looking for things to deal with. And we don't have to, but it's familiar. That part of ourselves that has problems, that is stressed, that feels like it's too little to deal with whatever it is it's dealing with, becomes addictive. We've said this before, but it's true. Problems can become addictive because there is a you to solve them, a path to solving them, and ultimately a solution that's going to offer some reward. It's all just a fictional story, again, to the lost treasure, when in fact the real treasure is here and now, without the need for that reward, or without the need for the journey, as it were, to prove that you are something to yourself. You can just be yourself.
Yeah, that realization that oftentimes we go looking for problems, and even when we're feeling certain things, how often we'll say things like, "Oh, well, everyone deals with this. Everyone's got their problems. Everyone's got their things. Everyone's dealing with something like that." And how much of those things, not to say that that's not the case, but how many of those things do we continue to say like, "Oh, everyone has this," to validate our own continued perpetuation of it? Because it's it can't not be an assumption. Like the experience of anyone else, you say, "Oh, we were all feeling this way. Everyone was going through this." Who exactly was going through this? Who exactly outside of you was going through this? Is that not the only experience you actually know? Is that not the only thing you'll ever actually know here and now? Because that's the only component of this experience you can know. There's not another spot that you can know anything about anything with objectivity, with absolutiveness in absolute. You can't know anything else. You don't know anyone else's experience. We even talk about everyone goes through anxiety on varying degrees. Like your experience of it is unique, entirely unique. You don't know anyone else's feelings. You call it anxiety or happiness or joy or resistance or sadness or all of these things, but they're just feelings. Like they don't have a shade. They're just a familiar feeling that you've pinned as something previously and a concern about something previously, but they don't exist in the way I think about them. You know? They're entirely presumptive, assumptive with everything. And the thought that I have to maintain certain stories, narratives, problems, things I go through. Oh, I've been dealing with this one for a while. Have you? Do you know what it's been the entire time? Like exactly how long have you been dealing with it? Or is that just a story that you're creating right now? And it's right now the only place, the only amount of time you've ever been dealing with it? And is the heaviness connected to how long you think you've been dealing with it? How solidified it's gotten in that story? How solid of a problem it is that you're dealing with? Because they're all just sitting with you right now as a survival tactic in a sense. But you don't really know even what they are. You'll pin a story to it, but that's not it either. We just connect the feelings to certain stories, but they're not inherently connected, just to try and solidify, just our desire to solidify it as us to maintain you, to maintain the fucking story. Because, yeah, as you said, without my problems, what would I be?
I'd be having a lot more fun at the end of the day. I mean, that's really it. And it's funny because we start to have fun and then we almost feel guilty. It's like, am I supposed to be having this much fun? Surely I'm supposed to be struggling because I've struggled for so long. And again, that becomes the familiar, right? It becomes what we know. So we actually start to think that the struggle is necessary instead of recognizing that the struggle was to realize that you've never had to struggle to be you. That's all. We have a question here, and I think it's a good one because it kind of goes back to the idea of the problems that we often create are the problems that we want to create to some degree, the problems that we can at least understand within our current mentality. If we are intelligence itself, then how come we can't simply have the answers to our problems? Are you sure the problem is what you think it is, right? Because somebody who is young, someone who's a teenager, let's just say, is going to think that the problem in front of them is that they can't get what they want, for example, when in fact the problem is that they need it. The problem is that they want it so badly. The problem is the frustration that goes with it. The problem is so on and so forth and so on and so forth. So intelligence isn't ever just learning one thing. Intelligence is in fact learning so many things at the same time, not to mention the intelligence of the body that's adapting all the time as that person's growing. So the answer, quote unquote, that you're thinking about in terms of problem solving is so simplistic that it's not even what intelligence itself would consider to be a problem. The problem itself is just growth in every way. And there are infinite ways that we are growing in. It's not just about whether or not we can do a math problem.
Yeah, because it's like I use the problems to keep the recognition that I am just intelligence at bay. Like the problems go along with the story. And so why can't we have an answer to our problems? Because they aren't what you think. Like what you think they are is the problem itself. It's not the feeling, it's not the situation, it's what you think they are. In itself is the problem because it's not what you think it is. Doesn't mean that there won't be discomfort, doesn't mean that there won't be shit and fucked up shit and difficult things to go through. But the idea that you could know what it is a massive component of it, like where the weight comes from. It's not to say that there isn't something there, but you knowing or thinking that you could know what it is, adequately label it, adequately call it something, adequately know it is the problem itself. So the answer couldn't come to something that isn't what you think. Like if you can't actually know what it is, there couldn't be an answer to it because there isn't anything there. And that's not like a toxic positivity thing, but it's nothing's there outside of what you're creating right now, what you're maintaining right now, your certainty that it is exactly what you think it is. Without that, it's not such a solid thing to have an answer to. And that's when it starts to, I don't know, demystify, fade a tiny bit, even just a little. And once it fades a little, you're like, oh, is it not just me maintaining it to maintain me, to maintain my false certainty? If I don't know exactly what it is, it's no longer something to figure out. So, in order for it to be something to figure out, I have to think I know exactly what it is. Fuck.
Well, because the alternative is that you can just do your best moment to moment. Isn't that's really it? This is why it always comes down to surrender. Surrender to what? What you're doing. And it's really because you'll notice a lot of your thoughts are really you thinking it should be something else. Right? Trying to make it into something else. That's a lot of your thought. That's why surrender is basically, just be. And that means when thoughts pop up, you just let them be too. But then we're like, well, I'm thinking, I got to think about why I'm thinking those. You really don't, though. Like it's crazy how much intelligence we actually have in just letting thoughts process. Like we have insights all the time. It's not that we had to struggle our way to have them. They eventually just formed through context and experience. This is what I was saying to you about the reason that in the schooling system they drill us with page after page after page of math problems, right? It's not like they try to teach us something in terms of this is how this works. They do, but then they just make you do page after page after page. And why? Well, what they're hoping is because they know that 90+% of the students aren't going to get the original explanation because frankly they're too young and it's not relevant to them. And so what they figure is if we just have them repeat this over and over and over and over again, eventually the brain through repetition alone will have an insight about how that mathematical formula works or how that function works. Think about that. They're banking on exactly what we're saying. They're banking on experience and context triggering an insight. It's not that they're banking on the lesson. They're banking on you having experience in a realm where it's relevant to learn that lesson through trial and error and unfortunately the fear of failure. Right? So we're doing this all the time. It's not that we have to memorize things. We are always learning through repetition and context all the time. But again, we make that mistake of thinking that we're learning concepts. It's like, no, you're learning concepts that point to reality. You're learning concepts that point to something that is. So you're not actually learning the concepts. You're supposed to be learning more about what is. The concepts are secondary to that. Right? And so in the process of learning what is, that has nothing to do with being in your head all the time. Learning what is, like self-knowledge, is not conceptual. It's a state of being. It's a state of sensitivity, right? It's listening. And that doesn't mean listening with your ears. I'm saying that as a general sense of attention, awareness, not judging, not making an assumption. So just a general state of awareness all the time. And in that state of awareness, you are going to be on the ball as things pop up. But how often, when things don't pop up, do you start thinking about things that might pop up instead of just being in the moment that you're in? It's like, well, what am I supposed to do? Nothing. Whatever it is you're doing. That's the whole point. Why don't you enjoy just sitting there? That's really the question. Why don't you enjoy? This is why, before the internet, especially before the internet, it was very common for people to take up certain hobbies like whittling or building houses of cards or just doing things with their hands, things that were really challenging, like that wooden game that we had at one of the mini retreats where there was like a cup and a ball on a string and you had to like try and get the thing. And that, like, why is that entertaining? Because it's challenging. That's why, because it draws your attention. It draws your attention. It just serves no purpose. It serves no purpose, but it draws your attention. And why is that valuable? Because you're honing your attention, which means that you are honing your experience, your reaction to life, how you feel things moment to moment to moment, just by paying attention. But so many times we got to do things for a purpose. What's that purpose? To make me more. And instead, we're actually diminishing ourselves because we're not being in the state where we are whole, where there's no more to be. It's just watching ourselves change in that state of wholeness. That's all it is. But we keep trying to get somewhere through thought. And that place that we're trying to get through thought, we're walking away from with each and every thought trying to get there.
Each and every one. And that, like that example of the game that we had with the ball and the string and the stick, and basically it's like a little half cup thing, like the top of a golf tee, but bigger. And then the ball kind of fits it. So you swing it around and catch it. And that, even just that, like doing it for the sake of doing it, because it's challenging, is a means of honing that attention. But then as soon as it becomes a competition, I'm going to start measuring how I'm doing, how quickly can I do it, how well, and then it meaning something about me. It's like, that's when it shifts to no longer honing attention. And it becomes to build this assumption about yourself, or fear it being diminished, or building it out of something, which eventually, you get to a spot, and then you've gotten to a certain place, and then you're just trying to hold on for dear life. Like, I can't lose this because this is where all my value comes from. Being the best ball string cup thrower in the world. And that's the shift, is when it means something about you. That's when the fear, that's when the desire, that's when the concern, but that's when those, sort of temporary egotistical nice feelings come in. I'm the greatest. I'm the GOAT. I am the best ball string cup thrower that's ever lived. And so those feelings are nice for a bit, but they can't be there without all the other ones, all the other feelings. And it's like we're never willing to test the lack of that, just the enthusiasm, like that feeling in and of itself. Like, it's like I, growing up, got caught on the track of measurement, like, as a kid, you're not measuring yourself. You're just doing it for the sake. There's no thought of what it's going to get you tomorrow. There's no thought of what it's going to become. There's no thought of where it's going or what you will be because of something, positive or negative. It's just where you're at, involved enthusiastically in reality, in the dream, in whatever the fuck you want to call this, for the sake of doing so. And then you start looking around, and people are measuring themselves. People are trying to be something, trying to become something, striving for certain titles and objects and things, and you're not really sure what to do as you get thrown into the system and start getting told what to do. So you start looking around to what other people are doing. Like, oh, well, they're all doing this. They're all throwing the ball string cup, playing that game, and measuring themselves and trying to be the best at it. Because then everyone knows that once you become the best ball string cup thrower in the world, then you feel amazing and euphoric, and you've achieved the spot in which you've always been trying to achieve. Everyone knows that, of course, despite people being there and looking back and being like, no, this is not the point. The greatest ball string cup thrower in the world is not the epitome of reality. It's where you already are. It's the spot that you're in right now, as the you that you are right now. That is it all the time. You're always moving through that spot that you're striving for, to be the best, the greatest, the most well-liked, the most well-known. That's the spot that you're in right now. It has the potential to be when you stop trying to be all the other fucking things, or thinking that you should be something else, or thinking that you could be anything else, thinking that you could leave the exact spot that is the quote unquote pinnacle at all times. Like, so much of my fear stems from that idea that I could not be in the spot that always has that potential. I can't not be in that spot. I can't not be here now, which is the thing that everyone's striving for, looking away while they're standing fucking right in it. Because we think that there's going to be a benefit to getting to another certain spot that we're so sure of, that we aren't.
Think about it. Whenever anybody has ever tried to teach us something, what is something that we often hear? Pay attention. And how contradictory is that when they're measuring our value? When we know that we're being tested and that we are going to be compared to our peers, who, again, we value as a source of self-validation because we don't know any better. We're just coming into the world. We're still trying to figure out how to fit in with everything. And so they're like, pay attention, while we're worrying about our progress, not realizing the more we worry, the less attention we have. Like, it's in everything we do. Pay attention. And then we're like, how am I doing? And it immediately takes us out of it. It's that whole Archer thing. If you're aiming for the target and the prize for hitting that target, then you are not aiming at that target. Half of your attention is not on that target. Right. And it's really important to recognize that. Or my Sifu used to say in Kung Fu, those who chase two rabbits catch none. I really like that one.
Yeah, that's a great one, because you can either focus on what something means or just pay attention to where you're at. Just be focused on the experience that you're having. And if you're fully focused on it, there's no need to try and be safe and maintain this measurement of it. And it's like I've never even taken the leap of just paying attention to where I'm at. And there's a little bit of discomfort that comes up even on this call. I'm used to at least maintaining, a couple responses or thoughts as I go. And a couple minutes ago, I was like, let's try just paying attention and not holding on to any idea of, what to say next at all, or mark down, as a safety mechanism. It's like I use my ability to attempt, not even measure, but attempt to measure my progress as a safety mechanism, as a fucking bumpers, like bumpers when you're bowling. But that's not freedom. Like being willing to just be where you're at, to just focus on what's actually happening right in front of you. Just pay all of your attention to that. Like, that's it. Like, that's it right there. But there's so many things, potential things that we could focus on. Like, how am I doing this? Where am I getting to? How do I compare to this? How do I compare to that? How am I doing? What are my problems again? Oh, yeah, those are my problems. And it's like everything but just paying attention to where you're at, just being where you're at for the sake of being where you're at, for the experience itself, to actually experience reality. Like, so much of my life I spent not experiencing reality. Like, I was kind of like a little tiny variation of it, a fragment of it, while still being all of it the whole time
And
and
feeling it.
seeing all
I
of it.
just want to make that clear. Feeling it the whole time. It's
Yeah.
what you're paying attention to that changes. Like that's why life is intense. That's why we choose to medicate. It really is. It's because it just numbs everything that we're feeling, right? Or we choose to delve into one distraction or another, but it's still all felt. It's still all felt.
Yeah. It's all a component of it too. Like, because even the thought of just paying attention to where I'm at all times, it's like I'm always doing it. It's just there's a component of me that's distracted, looking at things that I think it is, that I clearly in some way, shape, or form think are more important to focus on. The illusion that there's something more important to focus on than just the spot that you're in right now, where you're at right now, the situation that you're in right now, the person that you're talking to right now, the meal that you're eating right now. The illusion that there's anything more important than that is the entire illusion all the time. Like the thought that I should focus on, it will be more beneficial to me in some way, shape, or form to focus on something that isn't happening right now. Like, that will keep me safer, focusing on something that isn't right now. That will help me get to where I'm going better. That will get me to the spot that I'm striving to be at more quickly if I pay attention to something else. When it's the paying attention to the thing that you're experiencing that is the thing that I'm trying to get to more quickly by not paying attention to it. That is fucked up. That's fucked. That I'm thinking that there's things that are more important in order to get me to the spot that I'm in, that I'm avoiding through paying attention to something else, when the place that I'm trying to get to, that I'm using the lack of attention that I'm paying now, is the spot that I could otherwise and would otherwise be paying attention if I didn't think that it would be more important to focus on something else. Like, this is the spot that I'm trying to get to. Like, this is the place that I'm running towards as fast as I can, that I've always been trying to get to. This spot, this place where it all is just, I don't know, that I made it, that I fucking got there. You know, it's always, I've been running in that spot towards my idea of what I think this spot is. For who? I don't know. I thought it was for myself. Almost never was. And yet it was.
It's for who you thought you were. Yeah, that's kind of the point. It's just kind of funny. Oh man, yeah, it's it's interesting because if you think about it, it makes sense to keep thinking about it. That's really it. The more you think about it, the more thoughts like you should keep thinking about this. If you think about it a little bit more, we'll eventually come to a point where, we'll just know. Just think about that. And it's just justifying more thought, more and more and more thought. And that happens all the time. Fuck, that happens all the time. Because the more you think about it, the more your thoughts just like there's more to think about. And you're like, yeah, and if I think about those things, eventually I'll get to the end of this fucking road. No, because there's no end to the considerations. There's no end to the considerations. There's no right decision that is clearly the right decision. Because if you take it outside of the end result you're shooting for and you look at the next thing that happens or the next thing that happens or the next thing that happens, eventually you're going to go, fuck, I didn't want that to happen. I promise you. So nothing is what you think it is on its surface. Ever. And we just second guess. We think that by second guessing, we're going to come up with a better response than to have faith in what we're becoming all the time. And that doesn't mean not fucking up. And I say fucking up with love. What I mean is that it doesn't mean not going through the process of doing things in a way that's kind of half-assed and then slowly working and learning how to do things in a way that's slightly more refined based on your relationship with yourself. Again, see, that's the whole thing. Everything's teaching you self-knowledge. Everything is teaching you, if you pay attention, to trust yourself. That's all it's teaching you. Or there's the consequence of not doing so, which is the gaping hole of hell that is thought.
Yeah, and as soon as there's something, a thought, like, it's like you're in that now. It's like you've jumped out of being where you're at. Well, not actually jumping out, but like as soon as a consideration comes in, that's obviously so much more important than just continuing to pay attention, then it's like one after another, after another, after another, after another. Oh, what is this? And then it's like the back and forth. The worry about being worried. The worry about being worried about being worried. The fear of being afraid. The fear of being afraid of being afraid. And that can go on for forever.
Exponential fear.
Exactly. Until you realize that there's nothing wrong with being afraid. Like, there's nothing wrong with the thing that you think there's something wrong with. There's nothing wrong with the insecurities that you have. Like, there's nothing wrong with you as you are right now. Like, right now, there's not a spot that you get better, that you become more complete. It's okay. Like, it's possible to just pay attention to where you're at. And from that spot, take into consideration things when you feel like taking into consideration things. But the primary being that paying attention to where you're at is the most helpful thing you can ever do. It's the spot that you're trying to get to. It may not seem like it at times, but we've kind of run with the coping mechanism of avoiding the intensity of just being here. And we never checked back in. I was never like, oh, can I maybe just pay attention being here? No, I couldn't do that because of all of these things. Because of all of these things. All these reasons. Couldn't possibly just pay attention. So it's not even worth trying. It's not even worth giving an old test. Stop making so many assumptions about what it is I'm going through, the problems that I'm experiencing, the problems that I have. Do you know that you have them? Stop telling yourself that you had them. Would you still have them? Would you? Like, maybe, maybe not, but you haven't even tested the possibility of it. You haven't even tested your ability to just continue to be reality, step through yourself, just continue to do it. And without needing to maintain the measurement or the concern or the fear or the thought about what might happen next. You don't have to do that, but we never go back and test that out. What if I stopped telling myself a story and just paid attention to where I'm at? Just chilled out for a second. Stop thinking that there's another spot that'll make me complete. Just tested it out. Maybe there's no other place other than where you're at to experience wholeness and completeness. There's no spot in the future that you get to where you finally made it. Like, you can give it a try, even just for right now, the rest of this call, for today, for 5 seconds, even. Might as well, right? You tested the other side of it for a fucking while. And it hasn't really worked super well, has it? Not in the way that you thought.
Well, you wouldn't be here otherwise. Right? That's kind of the whole thing. I always find that funny when people come and they'll get into a conversation with us. They're like, but thinking, but positive thinking, surely. And it's like, you're here though because you're suffering, right? And you've been positively thinking your way to here. So what makes you think that it's working? Outside of the fact that the alternative is that it's not. The alternative is that it's really on you, not about how you're thinking. Not about how you're thinking, about you being what you are here and now. Right. And so that's the alternative, but there's no sense of control in that, as we've discussed. But here's a great exercise. I find this one to be a lot of fun. It's meditation for anybody who's wondering, but it's not. And so what I mean is go for a walk down the road. Let's just say, just take a walk. But as you're walking, take very careful, pay very careful attention to each and every step that you take. Pay very close attention to when your heel lands, how your foot rolls onto the ball of your foot, how your foot leaves the ground. Each and every step, I want you to feel the entire impact on the bottom of your foot from the point where it hits the heel all the way to the ball of the foot where it rolls off, and then feel the other foot. And focus on the feeling of each and every step. And what you'll find is as you're doing that, you're going to start thinking, why the fuck am I doing this? You're going to start thinking about, is this doing anything? And those thoughts are going to come in. Focus back on your foot. Focus on the next step. Right? If you do this once a day, even for 5 minutes, you are going to find your relationship with thinking dramatically changes. And it's just because you're starting to recognize that you have two options. You can pay attention to what's happening, or you can get lost in thought. And that's it. It's a choice. It's a choice, and it's a choice we make often. We really do. We will go to a specific thing, say we like to dance or we like to play sports, whatever it might be. We'll do that. We'll focus on what we're doing. We'll feel better after doing so. And then we'll go back to our life and we'll start thinking again, not recognizing that we could have been doing the same thing that we were just doing. That, in fact, our efficacy does not diminish if we stop thinking and thinking about ourselves and judging our progress. It increases. because now we're paying attention to everything that we're doing rather than splitting our attention between how we're doing and how we think we're doing. It's so half-assed backwards. It always is. That's the funniest part about this. It's like, I want to be happier. I need to chase happiness. Oh my God, I'm terrified of not being happy. Why am I so afraid? And it all falls apart. Like, it's this cycle that happens. But we look at the superficial, we go, happiness, good. Happiness, good. And it's like, yeah, now you have something to protect, right? Something to chase. Now you have something you have to shoot for, something that when you don't feel like you are happy, you're going to get worse, right? There's so much of a cost to every one of these thoughts, but we look at the superficial offer of control and we just fucking dig in. And after a while, because we've dug in for so long and because everybody around us is like, dig in, we're all digging in, dig in. We just get so lost, we don't realize there's an option until we have those small moments where we're playing basketball or we're going for a jog or we're working out or we're hanging out with our kid. You know, like those are the moments where all of a sudden we're like, right, I don't have to think about myself all the time. Oh, this feels great. And we enjoy it. And then we go, oh, right, but how this can't last forever. Do I deserve to feel this great? And we're right back in it. We're right back in it.
Yeah, that exercise, even right now, like the exercise of walking and feeling every step that you take, like every component of every step. It's like the closer attention you pay, the less space there is for any fucking thoughts about it. And the thought of things being more important than this, it's kind of you're put in this spot where you see like, oh shit. Because even as you were talking, I was imagining like going on a walk and just my mind immediately coming up with, but but what about what about but this, but tomorrow, but this thing, but this other thing, but this issue, but this problem, but this thing. Like they immediately and then you can see like, oh, this isn't something that's as necessary as I thought. Because I'm just on a fucking walk. I'm just walking. I'm just sitting here making sounds with my mouth. That's all that's happening right now. And that's all that needs to happen. That's all you have to focus on. And then from there, you want to plan for something tomorrow, you can do that, but your attention remains where you're at. Because there couldn't possibly be a more important thing to focus on because there isn't any other thing. There isn't any other thing. And sure, there's, you can come up with a lot of things to argue that, but there really isn't anything else. You're always here now. That's it. That is it. And I'm finding it is a practice in a sense, but it's not a practice to get anywhere or get better at it. But it's just something like the just paying attention to where you're at is something that I'm not used to. I'm not used to just paying attention without the background noise, without something going on, at least something going on. Measurement, thoughts, considerations, concerns, fears, worries, even things I'm looking forward to. Like there's always something there, but when there isn't, like that's a new experience. That's very interesting. And then yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And then the thought, even the thought of using some fucking gratitude or affirmation is like, what a crock of fucking shit. Like, what the fuck? Why the fuck would I do that? Oh, I'm so grateful for what? You're seeing it right now. You're paying attention. It's all right there. It's all right here. Like, oh, but I'm so glad. Oh, I'm so good at this. Like who? Like you need to utilize all that made up bullshit. And it doesn't compare. It just doesn't even come close. It's like a percent of a percent of a percent of nothing of the experience of just being where you're at without a need to know where you're going or have an idea of where you're going or where you've been or what's already occurred or what got you here. Like, you don't have to maintain all of those things. There are certain things, considerations you can maintain, but 99.99999% of them are not necessary. They're not necessary at all. And that's where you feel clear, where you're just in it. It's like an entirely different experience. And that's a great quote. I was able to read it while I was talking. I can't always do that. But oh man, like, you don't have to know anything about yourself to be yourself. In fact, not knowing anything about yourself allows you to be yourself. You can't be yourself if you're holding on to an idea of what the fuck you think that is. It takes you away from being yourself, everything that you think that you are, or that you should be, or that you could have been, or should have been. It's like those, none of them get you there. They only take you away. Any idea only takes you away. It only cuts down on that experience of freedom, flying, peace, spot that you're in. Not even peace. That's not even, it doesn't even do it at all. It's not that, because it's not what you think. It's not a thing that you get to. It's only where you're at without all the things that are taking you away from that, the considerations that you've invested in, the concern, the fear, the worries that you've invested in for so long. It's funny. You don't have to.
That's why there's no spiritual levels. That's why there's no spiritual levels. Because we're always here. We're always here. And there's no progress to get here. There's the perception of progress. There's the perception of a journey. There's the need to perceive a journey. But there is no actual journey. Right? It's just sitting in it. And then the more you do, the more you realize it's all you've ever been doing, regardless of how closed your eyes were. It really is. And it's so interesting to watch it, because it's always happening. It's just getting out of the way. It's having faith in yourself. It really is. Like, it's so funny to me, especially after all the years that I laughed at that shit. Like I'm like, that'll never work. And I was thinking my way into hell, like, repeatedly. I say this from experience, like, it doesn't do anything. The thoughts you have in your head you're holding on to them because they comfort you to some degree. They comfort you, and they offer you some feeling that what the fuck is happening. That you can, in fact, be more, that you can have control, and we have a lot of ways of influencing things, but we really want to feel like we have control. That's often all this comes down to. Because if we feel like we're in control, then we can ignore the fear. We can tell ourselves, there's nothing to fear because I have control. But then, of course, we become afraid of losing control. It's just this loop. That's all it is. And the alternative is just being here. And this is why it's so important to just keep it light. I know I say this a lot, but that's really it. Like, you can make anything heavy. You can make anything heavy. The fact is, the process of letting go of your insecurities, the process of learning responsibility, the process of letting go of judgment, the process of letting go of self-judgment, and all that other stuff is going to happen whether you treat it like it's hard or not. It's just that you have the willingness to change. If you have the willingness to question yourself, you're going to go through some stuff. You don't have to go, I'm going through stuff, so this is difficult. It's what it is. It's what it is. You may as well laugh at it as you go. That's why I prefer laughing at myself. I'm a big fan of laughing at myself, I have to admit. And because it's a much healthier response to getting caught up in the shit than going, fuck, I did it again. Or I'm not on the conscious path. I just laugh at myself. I'm just like, fuck, I got caught up again. And that's it. And that's all there is to it. And why do I do it? Why do I do that? Because it does not disempower me. Because it does not make it look like it's fucking quicksand to me anymore. It's just like I was absent-minded. I got caught up in a thought rather than, I'm slipping back into hell. The more you perceive it as hell, the more it fucking traps you like hell. You really are disempowering yourself. And this is the argument that people are making right now on Instagram regarding your comments about seasonal affective disorder, and their whole point is like it's a real thing. It's like, well, nobody's saying it's not, but you're so focused on it being a real fucking problem that you're not focused on you being the real fucking solution. You're trading your empowerment for your disempowerment just so you can have something to fucking blame. It's not to say that it's not real, that it's not an influence, but you are passing your power to something else by playing victim to it. And I say that as somebody who went through that shit. The reason I say this, the reason I'm so fucking cutthroat about it is so I'm not back in there. See, that's the whole thing. They're like, well, you don't know. You're not experiencing it. You're right. I'm not, but I did. Do you want to ask me about that? And then what's funny is that if they do, and you're like, yeah, I experienced that, they do the same shit that a Christian does when you're like, I used to be Christian. Well, you didn't really then. And it's because it's like, I just don't like that answer. You're implying I have more influence over my life than I want to admit I do. And that's all it is. I just don't want to admit I do because I can't take accountability without blaming myself for not doing so sooner. And that's the other thing. It's like, oh, you're implying people did something wrong. It's like, no, that's actually your response. Other people have heard this message and didn't blame themselves at all. They went, fuck, that's right. I can take responsibility. The people who are like, oh, you're encouraging people to feel shame. It's like, no, that's your shame. That's yours. You're judging yourself. And so you're projecting that everybody else is going to have that fucking response. And that's what's in your way. Your judgment. It stops you from learning because you can't learn if you're judging yourself for making a mistake earlier. You'll actually avoid learning just so you don't have to feel like you didn't know before.
And so we just continue to perpetuate this. And it's just a continued investment in this idea that I can know what's going on. I'll just pretend that I do. I'll just pretend that I do to avoid being here. I just keep pretending that I know just to avoid the place I'm trying to get to through knowing and the response to being back in it. If it's not laughter, it's being back in it. Right? Like if you catch yourself doing anything and you aren't willing to laugh and you do think it means something about you for the quote unquote time you spent being caught up in something, you're continuing to be caught up in something. You're caught up in the idea that that should have happened differently. Like even the thought of it's like obviously there's a difference in being caught up in assumptions and not. But to think that you should never get caught up in assumptions is an assumption. Like you can't even have that. You can't even have that, right? Like as soon as you have that, you're in it. And so it's not something you can get across to someone. You can't possibly get it across using words. You can try, you can't get it across using anything because any thought of getting it anywhere, like you can say it all you want. Just here. Just pay attention to where you're at. But you have to take it in for yourself because there's a lot of reasons that I've built as to why I shouldn't pay attention. Oh, I couldn't possibly just be where I'm at. I have to do all of these things. I can't trust myself to handle that when it comes up, when it happens, if it happens. I don't know if it will happen, but I must maintain this idea because if it does, then I can't just be where I'm at if it does. And so therefore I can't just be where I'm at right now. But if I could be where I'm at right now, then maybe I could be where I'm at when it does come up. And that's the practice is me being here is the best preparation I can do for fucking anything, for any situation. Paying attention to where I'm at right now will prepare me the best for paying attention to where I'm at right now. Like I invest in this idea that not paying attention to where I'm at and doing something else is going to be more beneficial for me if the thing actually happens. But it isn't. It won't. It doesn't. Trust me, I've tried. And yet it got me here. And it will again.
Attention. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Really, it's like, it really is, like, because it's like anything you do. You're developing a skill, right? And if you think about that, what's the skill when you're being present? Being present, which translates into everything you do, because everything you do is going to be determined by your level of presence. Because the more you're thinking about other stuff, the less you're in what you're doing. This is how accidents happen very frequently. Every one of us has a scar somewhere on our body from somewhere that we just weren't paying attention. That we were making an assumption, we were feeling a little cocky, we weren't thinking things through, and that's it. It's because attention translates into everything. So just like, if you want to be better at making decisions, make more of them. If you want to be better at being present, welcome to it. This is it. You're here. And that's it. There's nowhere else to go. Nothing else you need to do. You're here. Now, as that thought pops up, like, well, what? No, and you're here. That's it. And this is the practice. Okay. And as the thoughts creep up, you go, right, but I'm here. It's one of my favorite things to do when I start getting carried away about the problems in my life. I like looking at the room around me and recognizing that none of those problems are in this room. Because that's the reality. The reality is I'm just fucking sitting here telling myself a story. that's really it. And I'm telling myself the worst story because I'm feeling stressed, because I'm feeling small, because I'm feeling afraid, because I'm feeling like I'm not enough. And so, of course, the story is terrible based on how I perceive myself. But if I would just let that shit go, and that does not mean perceive myself as the master of all, I can do anything. It means let it go. It means not trying to perceive myself as anything, being what I am and moving forward and recognizing, holy fuck, that's enough. Because it always has been. Even when you've been in the way of that happening, you still managed to get here.
Oh my gosh. Even as we're talking, I'm getting things coming up. It's like, but this journey you've been on to becoming fucking, I don't even know, becoming, for thinking that I'm becoming something. The thought that it's I'm going somewhere, that something is leading me or being led by, or there's some path that I'm on. What about all of that? What about all of the things that you've been through? What about all the stuff that you've done that have happened in the past? That means something, right?
Oh, I got here.
Did. But as soon as I'm just where I'm at, it's like, but all these other things. But what about tomorrow? But what about what might happen? This could happen. It's like, yeah, and if it does, I'll still be here. And it's like, I'll still be here. If it happens, I'll still be here. Not going anywhere. Like, it doesn't knock you out of here just because something happens or just because something happened. But the thought, the concern, the fear, the worry, the anticipation will, in a sense. It won't, but it will. Will, but it won't. And that practice, like that, you can do it. You can. You're always able to let go of your assumptions. And all of the reasons that you've built up over the years for not paying attention, for not just being where you're at, for not just being willing to look at reality without an idea of what it means about you or where you're going or what you're turning into or where you're getting or the next thing that's going to get you closer. Oh, but that next one's going to get me even closer to it. As long as that happens that way. So I'll use this to get there. And then I'll use that to get there. And I'll use that to get there. And I'll just keep getting closer and closer and closer while having never left the whole time, thinking that I'm getting closer, thinking that I'm getting further from something at all times, thinking that I'm going in a direction towards or away from anything.
Thinking. You'll notice the common denominator behind all of this shit is thinking. That's really what it is. You know, and people would be like, well, so thought's evil? No. Thought's great. I love thought. I love language, concepts. That's great. It's really good until it's a fucking warden, until it's a prison. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, thinking a chair is broken is very different than thinking you are broken. The chair doesn't give a fuck. You do. Thinking you're broken changes your whole fucking day. It changes your whole experience. So thought focused on the fiction of yourself is the problem. It's not thought. It's thought focused on the fiction of yourself, because that's all your idea of yourself is. It's a goddamn fiction. And as soon as you start thinking about that fiction like it's reality, you are trapped by it. And you made it yourself because you identify with the thought. Well, that's totally me. Of course, your thoughts are going to reflect like that's important. You know, we said this before, like your thoughts protect you in the same way that they protect your body, because you think that you are your idea of yourself. Your body will fucking react as though you're attacked just because you feel insulted. That's the whole point. You identify with the fiction of you, and so all of your thoughts are hell-bent on addressing that fiction. But that fiction is a problem because it's not reality. And so all of your thoughts are just chewing away at this problem that can never be fucking solved. No wonder there's no attention. No wonder we're not able to pay attention, because we keep getting sucked back into this fictional story that we think is important. But it's only because we think it's important. It's really all it is. If I think about this, I'll get somewhere. No, you're always going to be just back in the present with these thoughts. That's all you're ever going to do. So I'm glad we chatted about this today, specifically because we have a retreat coming up in Vermont in a couple of days. I'm really excited for this one because, see, the retreats for me are an opportunity to practice what I practice every day in my life, which is exactly this. Just arrive. Like, there's so many thoughts we have about, like, what's it going to be like when I get to the retreat? What are people going to want to talk about? Oh my God, you don't fucking know. Just go. And that's exactly what my attitude is towards everything now. I don't fucking know until I get there. And the only reason I want to think about it, the only reason that I want to fucking plan what I'm going to say or do is because I'm terrified that I'm not enough otherwise. But none of the thinking about it is going to make me anything other than what I already am. So I'm going to think my way to show up there and still be what I would have been otherwise, except now I'm all fucking lost in thought. So I may as well just show up and be what I was going to be, rather than be what I was going to be feeling confused about it. Because one way or another, it's still going to be me. I may as well just be what I am, let the chips fall where they may, and then deal with it as such. But we try to deal with it before it ever fucking happens, and we don't realize it diminishes our ability to deal with it entirely.
Entirely. Like, holy fucking Christ, you're gonna be what you are regardless of your concern, worry, fear leading up to it. It's like, so you might as well cut that shit. Just pay attention to where you're at right now, because that's all you can do. There is no adequate way to prepare for uncertainty. There is no way to prepare for being where you're at in uncertainty in each and every moment than to just be where you're at in uncertainty right fucking now.
That's it. Simple, eh? All of this for that. And it applies to everything. All of this conversation comes down to that. And then the recognition that attention and relaxation go hand in hand. That one's fun too. But we're going to end this here. This has been a good conversation. Just want to let everyone know that although you can't join us in the Vermont mini retreat because the tickets aren't available anymore, you can potentially join us for a mini retreat in Vancouver, October 5th to October 9th. We haven't decided if we're doing this, but we do have 7 people who are currently interested, or at least 75% sure that they can make it. So we may actually decide to do this by the time we get back from Vermont. If you're interested, even if you're 75% sure that you can make it, go to dualistiCunity.com/Vancouver. I forgot what the city name was. Go to dualisticunity.com/Vancouver. Fill in your email address and just check the little box that says, yes, I think I'd like to come. I'm 75% sure or 100% sure. Because again, you're never going to know unless you jump. You're never going to know unless you leap. If you're thinking about whether or not you should leap, that's usually a good idea to leap, because at least then you're not thinking about it anymore. Right? So if you can join us in Vancouver, great. If you can't, do join us in the Netherlands. That retreat's going to be amazing. But this is all just meant to be a chance to keep it light. That's really what it is. You know, although there is going to be challenges and there are some things you're going to face in these retreats, they're easier to face because we keep them light. Because you are stronger than you think. There is no reason that they should be heavy unless you're thinking them that way.
Well said. Yeah. Very excited to see everyone in Vermont. That's going to be a fucking blast. And yeah, no more spots for that. But Netherlands, if you can make it, hop in there. So this has been a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great rest of your Monday, and appreciate you tuning in.
For sure. And I will see you in a couple of days.
Fuck yeah. I'm pumped for it.
Take care, everyone. Just keep in mind the schedule this week has changed because obviously we're going to be away, but you can check out the schedule on the website, dualisticunity.com. It's in the navigation bar. You'll find the group schedule there, and we'll be back next Wednesday for a free public group. You can register on our website. Take care, everyone.